Wednesday morning, and this is welcoming you to another edition of From the National Assembly Senate. As you're aware, the 8th National Assembly has clocked 2, and activities have started in earnest in celebrating, if you like, the activities, looking back at what happened in the past 2 years. Already on today's paper, we have about loaded, as usual, 3 reports to be presented, 4 motions will be moved, and then 13 bills to be considered for second reading. But just before we go into the chambers, I have with me here the Chairman Senate Committee on Rules and Business, Senator Babakar Bashir Garbai. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, as we have just said in the opening, activities have started in celebrating the 2 years of the 8th National Assembly. Now, can you maybe in summation, summarily, just tell us how far in terms of bills, motions, activities that took place in the last 2 years?
Thank you very much. You have already started introducing our order paper for today.
Yes.
Because there are some issues listed on the order paper for today that are topical. Okay. We have 4 motions, as you earlier mentioned. Out of the 4 motions, we have motion on the ongoing registration exercise, by INEC. So that motion is very, very important in the sense that we have a lot of complaints and also reactions from our constituents all over Nigeria that the arrangement going on now in registering voters, there are no adequate arrangement put in place to cover everybody. Okay. There is actually a growing concern that some of the young men that will be 19, so that will be 18 by next election will be disenfranchised, because in every local government, that is 774 local government, they only made an arrangement for a single registration center for every local government. Okay. So in each local government we have wards, and in wards there are actually wards that have up to 100 polling centers. So because of that, there is actually growing concern from our constituents. That motion will be moved by no less a person than Senator Akpabio, who is the minority leader of the Senate. Okay. Then we also have some bills, consumer protection and federal competition bill. We started considering this report yesterday. Okay. So very likely we are going to pass it today. Then we have witness protection. Then we also have the consideration of the 3 remaining ambassadorial nominees will also be considered by the Senate today. Okay. Then we have Federal Road Authority Bill and also Federal Road Funds Bill. Okay.
Well, sir, if we look at all these bills, how would you compare the amount of bills that has been treated so far in this Senate compared to that of the previous Senate?
No, so far so good. The 8th Senate, actually, what we receive in form of bills so far, yes, from the beginning to date, there are 503 in number, okay, number of bills received. Okay. Then compared to the 7th Senate, the total number of bills received throughout the 7th Senate, 4 sessions of the 7th Senate, actually total 585 compared to what we have received so far. So by Friday, we are going to have our 2nd year anniversary. Within just a period of 2 years, we were able to receive 503 bills. We introduced 503 bills compared to 585 bills of the entire 7th Senate. So then in addition to that, the number of bills passed under the 7th Senate, they passed a total number of 128 bills. As of now, we have passed 95 bills. Even in the order paper of today, we have reports, 4 reports that are going to be considered likely. Okay. We also have about 5 bills passed by the House of Representatives that have been sent to us for concurrence. So very likely, before today's session, we are going to pass 9 bills. So then in addition to that, we have also received 187 petitions.
Okay.
Well, sorry, we have moved 187 motions. Then the entire 7th Senate, that is the 4 years of the 7th Senate, they were able to take only 111 motions. Then number of petitions from various Nigerians from all over the country, we received 369 petitions. Under the 7th Senate, they received 218 petitions.
Okay.
Out of the 269 petitions, so far, we have already considered 70 petitions.
Okay.
Then under 7th Senate, they were able to consider 81 petitions.
Okay.
So actually, our performance actually is very encouraging, and we are going to perform more before the end of the 7th Senate, or before the end of the 8th Senate.
Okay.
Then I would also like to inform viewers that 7th Senate also collaborated, 8th Senate also collaborated with the private sector, a partnership with the private sector, which gave birth to NASBA, National Assembly Business Environment Roundtable. That is a partnership between the private sector and the National Assembly. There are some key institutions that are partnering with the National Assembly, like the Nigeria Economic Summit Group. We also have the Nigerian Bar Association section on business law. They have been partnering with the National Assembly with a view to review some of the legislations that have been passed and also come up with new bills in order to bring out Nigeria from the current recession.
Okay.
Then in addition to that, in order to make Nigeria globally competitive.
Yeah. Well, I believe within the next few days we'll be having a lot of activities that actually characterize the 8th Senate. So we have to now move into the chamber so that we get the proceedings as they start live. And as the days run by, I'm sure we'll be coming back once in a while, maybe in our bulletins, to get updates on activities that really characterize the 8th Senate. Thank you very much indeed, sir.
Thank you, Waziri.
Thank you very much indeed. Yeah. Well, we are going straight into the chamber for live proceedings of today's plenary. Happy viewing.
Constitute an ad hoc committee to investigate the circumstances surrounding the present feeding regime and the exorbitant airfare as fixed by National Hajj Commission, with a view to exposing any sharp practice therein and make appropriate recommendation concerning its findings to the Senate within 7 days, Mr. President.
Thank you. Any seconder to this? Senator Issa Misa.
Thank you, Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues. Senator Comrade Issa Hamamisau, representing Bauchi Central, Mr. President. I rise to second this very, very important motion. Mr. President, before seconding the motion, I would like to give my own understanding of this Hajj fair. We are not talking of appropriation, but we are talking of exploitation. Because this money, they are charging 1.5 million or over 1.5 million. This is something that they can do with 800,000. Because some people are taking the advantage under this government that is fighting corruption to enrich themselves. And that is what is happening. Mr. President, this Hajj fair can be done with 800,000. We have gone to Hajj so many times, and it is one of the 5 pillars of Islam, which if you have the privilege, you can go. A lot of people have this privilege, have this means, but we are talking of the exploitation from the Hajj Commission. So many of them, they connive with the people in Saudi Arabia who are giving accommodation. Because I remember the time when the present government took place, the one in Bauchi, we found out that so many, about 250 million, in what just one agent connived with one agent in Saudi Arabia to take that money. So, Mr. President, we are talking about exploitation, not appropriation. So we are talking about the corruption that is taking place where some people are using this avenue to enrich themselves. I think it is not fair for us to charge ordinary person 1,500,000 at this time of this recession. And it is very, very important. Our people are complaining. We have to do something about it so that this thing can be reviewed to about 800,000. I think that is my own point. Before I sit down, I want to commend the mover of this motion. It is very, very important, and it is our people are watching to see what we are going to do here. Thank you.
Senator Kabiru Gaya.
Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, I am Kabiru Gaya, representing the people of Kano South from Kano State. Mr. President, I wanted to commend Senator Dambaba for bringing this motion, and I'm a co-sponsor of this motion. And I believe this motion is a very straightforward motion, Mr. President. We should go to prayers and insist that, I'm requesting that we go to prayers because it's clearly stated that these organizations are extorting Nigerians simply because the payers by other private Hajj tour organizations, they are only charging 1.2 million, while they are charging 1.5 for common Nigerians. This is unfair, and I support the prayer, the first prayer read by, proposed by Senator Dambaba to this effect. Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, I think we just go straight to the prayers. But does anybody just want to contribute? One more person? Okay, Senator Kurfi.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Is it like this? Thank you very much, Mr. President. My distinguished colleagues, this is a very important motion moved by my colleagues. First of all, I would like to thank you for moving this very important motion. But I want to draw the attention of us. I have been going to Makkah for the past 30 years. This issue that we are discussing, Mr. President, my distinguished, is all hinged on dollar. If the dollar is rising, definitely everything will go up. So I'm not saying that the fare is not high. It is high, but this,
Fire on! Fire on!
What I want to draw attention of the people. No, I'm not going to dance here or to tell you. What? We are supporting you,
Distinguished colleague, Nasha Kurfi. I said Kurfi. Oh, Kurfi. Yeah, I said Senator Kurfi. I did. No, maybe my voice is not clear, but I meant Senator Umar Kurfi. That's why he got up.
So thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. for protecting me. Thank you very much, Mr. So
you are protected.
The issue I'm still saying is that despite the fact that dollar has gone up, that doesn't mean that they should increase this fare to this amount. This fare can be actually reduced to a reasonable amount. And more importantly, this country now, we have so many people going to Makkah. In other countries like Indonesia, Pakistan, they try to regulate them. Because those who have been to Mecca, they shouldn't be going there. That's why we're always this. No. Our Excellencies, what actually God is the Quran said, what Atibul Hajj, what Umratullah. You should go to Mecca and Umrah once in your life. So if now we are, please, sir, please, you better protect me. Protect me, please. Yeah. Huh? No,
address the chair.
Point of order is Minority Leader. Are you coming on point of order? Yes, point of order.
Mr. President, 56.9 and 56.9 says that when a senator is speaking on, no senator may converse aloud or make any noise or disturbance to interrupt him. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, there's too much noise, and we need to cut this noise so that we can listen to our colleagues and then we can make proper contributions.
Thank you, man. To repent to what I sustained. Distinguished colleagues, let us bring down this noise. It's getting too much so that we can make some progress. Senator Kurfi, quickly, if you can just round up.
So, Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, I am 100% in support of this motion. But the point I'm saying is this thing now, we should not forget that there is dollar effect in it. So what we should do now, we should try as possible to see that we will reduce this fare to a reasonable fare so that people can afford it. NAPCON can be invited so that they can reduce this because there are so many allies who have quoted. So if we can take the lowest quotation, that will be in favor of the Muslims. And more importantly, like I rightly said earlier, that those of us who have been going, if there is need, it can be regulated. If you have been to Makkah 3-4 times, you can allow those who have not been going there. In Indonesia and Pakistan, they normally try as possible to reduce it. Because after all, what Allah said in the Quran is, what people had, what Umaturullah. We should go to Makkah in our life or Umrah once in our life. So with this, Mr. Chairman and my distinguished colleague, I think I support the motion, and the fare should be reasonably reduced so that those who can afford to go can still go there. Thank you very much.
Distinguished colleague, go straight to the prayers. Prayer 1, urge the federal government to immediately direct NACON to review the 2017 Hajj fare downwards to a realistic, human, and fair amount afforded by pilgrims in this time of recession and economic hardship. The Commission should also be directed to reverse the unpopular, much talked about force-feeding policy since it negates the principle of freedom and choice for pilgrims. Those in favor of prayer 1 say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Prayer 2, constitute an ad hoc committee to investigate the circumstances surrounding the present feeding regime and exorbitant airfare as fixed by NACOM with a view to exposing any sharp practice therein and make appropriate recommendations concerning its findings to the Senate within 7 days, 1 week. Okay, Senator Dino Melai.
Mr. President, my respected colleagues, Dino Melai, Kogi West. Mr. President, we have standing committees in this chamber, and the standing committees should be given opportunity to carry out their responsibilities. And this falls under the core responsibility of the Foreign Affairs. So I want to amend the prayer to say that instead of ad hoc committee, the Foreign Affairs Committee should kind of.
Can I have a seconder to that, please? Senator Gobri.
I second exactly what Dino Malai said, that we should give the standing committee that opportunity to revisit this issue.
Thank you. Prayer 2 as amended. Let me put the question. Prayer 2 is amended to say that the standing committee of Foreign Affairs to investigate the circumstances surrounding the present. Let me put the question that the Standing Committee for Foreign Affairs constitute investigations of the circumstances surrounding the present feeding regime and exorbitant airfare as fixed by NACOM with a view to exposing any sharp practice therein and make appropriate recommendation concerning its findings to the Senate within 7 days. Those in favor of prayer 2 as amended say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Please, can we ensure that this report is back in 7 days? Thank you. Leader of the Senate. Yeah, point of order, Senator Mustafa. Senator Mustafa.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I'm Sani Mustafa Mohammed, representing the good people of Niger South. Personal explanation, Order 43. By the indulgence of the Senate and the leave of the President of the Senate, a senator may make a personal explanation, although there may be no question before the Senate. But no controversial matter may be brought forward, nor may debate arise upon the explanation. The terms of the proposed statement shall be submitted in details to the President of the Senate when this leave to make it is sought.
Go ahead.
Mr. President,
go ahead.
Mr. President, I stand to bring the notice of this hallowed chamber that a bridge at Gidamai on Moka Bokani Mekera Road in my senatorial district has completely been destroyed by heavy flood recently. It is important to note that the highway connects Kontogora to Makwa and most part of the northwestern states. We all know how strategic Makwa is in terms of linking the northern parts of the country and most part of the southern states. Once movement is hampered, the economy becomes grossly affected. At the moment, thousands of motorists are stranded, and the goods they are carrying are perishing and getting destroyed by the rain because of the collapsed bridge. This situation is so pathetic and needs urgent action. My prayer, I plead with this hallowed chamber to take every possible and necessary action to salvage the situation by mandating FEMA to use the provision for emergency repairs under the North Central route to urgently intervene. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, distinguished colleague. I heard that. I'm sure the chairman, FEMA, is here, and I'm sure you can meet with him later to see how they can help and relieve the suffering of the people opposed to this event. Leader of the Senate, point of order, Senator Dino Milai.
Mr. President, my very respected colleagues, Dino Milai, Kogi West. Mr. President, Order 43, by the indulgence of the Senate and the leave of the President of the Senate, a senator may make a personal explanation, though there may be no question before the Senate, but no controversial matter may be brought forward, nor debate arise upon the explanation. The terms of the proposed statement shall be submitted in details to the President of the Senate when the leave to make it is sought. Mr. President, my respected colleagues, I bring to the notice of this very important chamber this morning infraction and abuse of the act, of an act as passed by this Senate and indeed the National Assembly. Mr. President, I have here the certain political, public and judicial office holders' salaries and allowances, etc. Amendment Act 2008. Mr. President, this act was passed by the National Assembly and assented to by Mr. President in 2008. And this act is taking care of salaries, of Mr. President, Vice President, Senators, Auditor General, and even the permanent secretaries in this country. Mr. President, the act stipulates clearly what remuneration and salary should be enjoyed by permanent secretaries, director generals, and the head of service. And on part 1 of the Act, it is clear under severance that permanent secretaries are supposed to benefit only their severance to the tune of 300% of their basic salary. But an aberration was committed. There's a letter here I have, Mr. President. It reads, restoration of personal security and overseas treatment for life for retired head of the civil service of the Federation and the federal permanent secretaries. The letter reads, thus, Mr. President, this is to inform you that in a bid to ensure enhanced welfare package for retired head of the civil service of the Federation and federal permanent secretaries, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Dr. Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, GCFR, has graciously approved the restoration of their personal securities and overseas treatment for life. Mr. President, I repeat, Dr. Goodluck Ebele Azikiwe Jonathan, GCFR, has graciously approved the restoration for their personal security and overseas treatment for life. And if the wish and desire of a president will now override the provisions of an act passed by the parliament, then we are in a banana republic. The president of the Senate is number 3 in this country. The Speaker of the House of Representatives, the Senate President, they do not enjoy overseas treatment for one day, not to talk of life. You know how many permanent secretaries we have in this country that are retired? And you know what this will cost Nigeria in tunes of billions, hundreds of billions, if we begin to sponsor every permanent secretary for overseas treatment. And once this is authenticated, it means for you to be a retired PAMSEC, Mr. President, you must have attained the age of 60 or 65. And the older you get, the more frequent your sickness, and we must be taking you abroad for life. Mr. President, this is in contravention of the provision of this act as passed by the National Assembly. So my desire this morning and prayer is that maybe we propose the relevant committee on establishment to call to order that the wishes and aspirations and desires of a president or any public officer cannot override the provisions of the law. And this should be completely jettisoned and reversed so that the law can be respected. Mr. President, I so submit.
Distinguished colleagues, in line with our rules, can be no further debate on this. It came under personal explanation. But I think the Committee on Establishment will look into this and take necessary action. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, very distinguished colleagues, the first business of the day is the presentation of the report of the Committee on Establishment and Public Service Matters on the National Institute for Legislative Studies, NILS Act, Amendment Bill 2017. Mr. President, may wish to invite Senator Emmanuel Polka, Chairman of the committee, to move the motion for the Senate to receive the report.
Senator Polka.
Mr. President, Senator Polka Emmanuel Bayelsa Central. I rise to move that the Senate do receive the report of the Committee on Establishment and Public Service Matters on the National Institute for Legislative Studies, NILS Act, Amendment Bill 2017, SB 359. Mr. President, I so move.
Senator Wakil Menai, Bauchi South.
Your Excellency, Mr. President, distinguished senators, my name is Senator Madam Ali Wakili, and I represent Bauchi South. I rise to second the motion as ably moved that the Senate do receive the report of the Committee on Establishment and Public Service Matters on the National Institute for Legislative Studies, NILS, Act Amendment Bill 2017, SB 359, as so moved by my distinguished senator. I so second, sir.
Distinguished colleagues, those in favor that the Senate do receive the report of the Committee on Establishment and Public Service Matters on the National Institute for Legislative Studies, NILS Act, NILS Amendment Bill 2017, SB 359. Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Senator Porker, come and lead the report, please. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, very distinguished colleagues, the second business of the day is the presentation of the report of the Committee on Establishment and Public Service Matters on the Institute of Chartered Biochemists and Molecular Biologists Bill 2017. Mr. President, we wish to invite Senator Emmanuel Porker, Chairman of the committee, to move the motion for the Senate to receive the report.
Senator Porker.
Mr. President, Senator Porker, Emmanuel, I rise to move that the Senate do receive the report of the Committee on Establishment and Public Service Matters on Institute of Chartered Biochemists and Molecular Biology of Nigeria Bill 2017 SB 265. I so move, Mr. President.
Senator Yusuf, Taraba Central.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to second the motion that the Senate do receive the report of the Committee on Establishment and Public Service Matters on the Institute of Chartered Biochemists and Molecular Biologists of Nigeria Bill 2017 SB 283, so I second.
Distinguished colleagues, those in favor that the Senate do receive the report of the Committee on Establishment and Public Service Matters on the Institute of Chartered Biochemists and Molecular Biologists of Nigeria Bill 2017 SB 283. Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Senator Porker, if you come and lead the report, please. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, very distinguished colleagues, the third business of the day is the presentation of the report of the Joint Committee on Science and Technology and Judiciary, Human Rights and Legal Matters on the National Research and Innovation Establishment Bill 2017. Mr. President, you may wish to invite Senator Robert Borofes, Chairman of the committee, to move the motion for the Senate to receive the report.
Senator Borofes.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Robert Ajayi Borofes, representing Ondo North. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I rise to move that Senate do receive the report of the Joint Committee on Science and Technology and Judiciary, Human Rights and Legal Matters on National Research and Innovation Bill 2017 SB 239. I so move.
Senator Ruzoko.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, my name is Rose Oko, Cross River North. I rise to second the motion that the Senate do receive the report of the Joint Committee on Science and Technology and Judiciary, Human Rights and Legal Matters, National Research and Innovation Establishment Bill 2017 SB 239. I so move.
Distinguished colleagues, those in favor that the Senate do receive the report of the Joint Committee on Science and Technology and Judiciary, Human Rights and Legal Matters on National Research and Innovation Establishment, etc. Bill 2017 SB 239. Those in favor say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Senator Boniface, come and lay the report. Thank you. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, very distinguished colleagues, the first order of the day is a motion standing in the name of Senator Goswill Akpabio on the continued voters registration exercise, matters arising. Mr. President, may we invite Senator Goswill Akpabio to move the motion.
Distinguished colleagues, please, you can see on our other paper that we have about 4 motions. We normally, if you know by what we had agreed, Tuesday's day of motions, we made that this an exceptional case. So I'm going to allow very, very limited contributions so that we can go through this motion as quick as possible. Please, I'll seek your cooperation. Minority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. My distinguished colleagues, my name is Goswill Akpabio, representing the good people of Akwa Ibom Northwest Senatorial District, and by the grace of my colleagues, the minority leader of the Senate. Mr. President, I want to thank you and my colleagues for the opportunity to bring this very urgent matter, which affects the entire nation, to the notice of these red chambers. It is on the continuous registration that is ongoing right now in respect of INEC. So, Mr. President, I will go straight into the motion. The Senate notes that the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, commenced a nationwide continued voters registration exercise, which they call CVR, on the 27th day of April 2017. The Senate also notes that the exercise is meant for Nigerians who attain the ages of 18 years between the last exercise. I take that again. The Senate notes that the exercise is meant for Nigerians who attain 18 years between the last exercise to this day. Those who were not previously registered, those who previously registered but whose names could not be found in the voter registers, and those whose cards were lost or damaged. The Senate is aware that the exercise is ongoing in all the Commission's offices all over the country, in the 774 local governments across the entire nation, but not at the ward level. The Senate observes that the exercise has been faced with several challenges across the country, which include malfunctioning of the direct data capture machines, non-availability of the machines in some local government areas, slowness of the direct data capture machines, inadequate manpower, and inaccessibility of registration centers from prospective registrants, especially those residing in the rural areas. The Senate observes that the challenges are worse in states like Osun, and I did mention Akwa Ibom State, and I think it's not even ongoing in Anambra, which has election coming up, I think November this year, and so it's almost out of time, since it ought to have been done 6 months before. And then where only 30 voters are said to be registered per day in each of the local government areas, despite the number of people trunking those centers. And of course, despite the fact that almost each of the local government areas
have more than 10 wards each. Whereas governorship election will be taking place in Osun State in June 2018, and these challenges, if not tackled, will jeopardize or make the election less credible if urgent steps are not taken by the government. The Senate is aware that the inability of INEC, in this case, to effectively address the challenges of the registration exercise can lead to disenfranchisement of voters, which could result in serious voter apathy, which may render the 2019 upcoming elections unacceptable, not credible, and possibly undemocratic. Accordingly, the Senate resolves, 1, to urge the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, to undertake the Continuous Voters Registration Exercise, CVR, on a continuing and permanent basis in the respective polling units until all prospective registrants are registered. 2, the Senate urges the INEC to decentralize the registration exercise currently going on only in local government headquarters, should decentralize such to the ward level to further ensure that people who ought to be captured are captured. The Senate, therefore, wishes to mandate the Committee on INEC to monitor the exercise and report progress and challenges periodically to the Senate to ensure that all Nigerians are taken into account and the future elections are not jeopardized. Mr. President, I so move.
Senator Diola Olanimileko.
Mr. President, distinguished colleague, Adiola Solomon Olamilekon, representing Lagos West Senatorial District. Mr. President, distinguished colleague, while seconding this motion, I want to commend the mover of this motion because it's timely and it's very, very important and crucial. Mr. President, the current registration exercise going on in the country is nothing but a sham. As it is today, Mr. President, we are not doing any registration. What we are simply doing is just gathering in one local government, people coming out in troops to register. At the end of the day, you'll find out that INEC, we only succeed in registering just 5 or 10 people in a population of about 3,000 to 4,000. Mr. President, I want to call on the Senate that what is out there as far as this registration is concerned is nothing to write home about. INEC is not prepared. INEC is not prepared. For instance, Mr. President, in each local government, this registration is centralized to the extent that you can only get registered in the local government headquarters. And when you get to the local government headquarters, you only find one registry data capturing machine, or maximum 2. Maximum 1 or 2. And at the end of the day, within 2 to 3 hours, this same machine will pack up. And they will tell you that they cannot carry out or do any registration again for the day. So, Mr. President, I believe that the prayer sought by this motion the emphasis should be that this registration exercise be decentralized to go to the polling units across the country. And we should not wait till when the election is about 4 or 5 months before we start running helter-skelter. We should start now and we should learn how to do things in the proper way. And so INEC should be called upon to decentralize this thing with immediate effect and bring out more data capturing machines so that Nigerians can be registered and fully prepared for 2019 general election. So, Mr. President, the number of manpowers as well should be increased by INEC. So I'm in total support of this motion, and accordingly, I second this motion. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Theodore Oji, Abia Central.
Thank you, Your Excellency, the Senate President, my distinguished colleagues, my name is Senator V.A. Oji Ochendo, Abia Central. I rise to support this motion that is moved by the minority leader. The content of this motion captures exactly what is on ground in most of the states. Nothing is happening in most of the states. Mr. President, I want to remind INEC that the most essential ingredient of this exercise is prospective voters. Once the voters are not there, then the exercise is useless. But these voters are not doing anything because of the distance of the centers. The centers are far away from where these prospective voters live. And they have to be motivated to go and vote. How do you motivate them? You motivate them by providing transport. And that is what some state governments are doing right now, knowing fully well that this exercise is very essential. It's an exercise that leads to winning election or failing election. Therefore, what we will do is to help INEC to tell the state governments to help the voters by providing transport that will take the voters, prospective voters, to the registration centers if INEC cannot bring the centers close to these people. This is the worst case that is hindering this project. Others are there. We have been living with them. The machines are not working. But the human beings, those who are to vote, must be motivated. That is my contribution, Your Excellency. Thank you.
Senator Peter Nwabusi.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, my name is Senator Peter Nwabusi. Mr. President, I don't think, because I don't want to repeat what my colleagues have said, this is a very, very important motion. And like you said at the beginning, we do not need to waste time on an issue that is of national importance and very important to Nigerians. So, Mr. President, I would urge you to put the question so that we can answer it once and for all, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Peter Nwabusi. Prayer 1, urge the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, to undertake the continuing voters registration exercise on a continuing and permanent basis in the respective polling unit until all prospective registrants are registered. Those in favor of prayer 1 say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Prayer 2, urge the Independent National Electoral Commission to decentralize the registration exercise on ward basis and to further decentralize when the wards are large. Those in favor of prayer 2 say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Prayer 3. Prayer 3, mandate the Committee on INEC to monitor the exercise and report progress and challenges periodically to the Senate. Those in favor of prayer 3 say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Senator Wakil.
I have to give you a piece of information, but you have already ruled. I spoke to my constituent, the chairman of INEC. He is in total agreement with the principles and enunciations of this motion. But what he informed me is that right now they don't have the capacity because they are only utilizing their existing staffs. They needed finances for them to take ad hoc staffs that will have to take these things for it to be devolved to the wards and subsequently to the units. Their budget is coming up, and he has said that as part of his agenda, between now and 2019, with good finances and with good support from the Senate and the National Assembly, they will ensure that it's going to be a continuous, daily-based registration. But right now they are constrained because of paucity of funds, because of staff and other things. That's the only information I want to pass on, sir.
Thank you very much, Senator Wakil. I'm sure the chairman of INEC, Senate Chairman of INEC, will take note of your observations and the prayers that we have moved here and see that this exercise is improved upon. Thank you, Minority Leader, for that motion. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, very distinguished colleagues, The second order of the day is a motion standing in the name of Senator Francis Ali Mekena and Senator Bala Ibn Nalla on the Trans-Sahara Europe migration crisis. Mr. President, you may wish to invite Senator Francis Ali Mekena to move the motion.
Senator Francis Ali Mekena.
Thank you, Mr. President. My distinguished colleagues, my name is Senator Francis Ali Mekena, representing the good people of Edo North. Mr. President, I thank you for giving me the opportunity to move this motion, which is co-sponsored by my colleague and a friend, Senator Iba Nala Kebbi South. Mr. President, the Senate knows the definition of a migrant under the United Nations Organization for Migration as any person who is moving or has moved across any international border or within a state away from his or her habitual place of residence, regardless of the person's legal status, whether movement was voluntary or involuntary, what the causes of the movement are, and the length of stay. Mr. President, the Senate knows the negative trend towards this migration by Nigerians and other Africa through illegal routes across the Sahara Desert and the Mediterranean Sea, which has resulted in a colossal loss of life. The Senate is aware that the Nigerians who embark on irregular migration find their route through Libya, Morocco, and Algeria. The Senate is also worried that the International Organization for Migration Report 2016 revealed that about 5,070 people were estimated to have lost their lives on migratory routes around the world, and the Mediterranean alone witnessed a record of 3,870, out of which 2,000 of the casualties were from the Central Mediterranean route used by the West and North Africa countries, and Nigeria alone has more than 1,000 of the Central Mediterranean casualties. The Senate is more worried that because of the involvement of many Nigerians in irregular migration, the International Organization for Migration made Nigeria and Iraq a case study in one of their researches, the result of which was mind-boggling, and in addition to the tragic loss of life, a substantial number of victims are not recovered, and even those recovered are buried with, at best, a number and not a name. It is important to emphasize here that each unidentified migrant represents a missing person for a family who live in a perpetual grief without certainty of the whereabouts of their loved ones. Mr. President, the Senate is worried that the phenomenon is aggravated by the activities of unrepentant human traffickers who deceive unsuspecting Nigerians with promises of leading them to a greener pastures, only to sell them as sex slaves and, where possible, even harvest their body organs for money. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, if this ugly trend is not checked, it will lead to slave trade in this 21st century. The Senate is determined to reverse this negative trend and the human treatment suffered by Nigerian migrants in the hands of immigration officials in the neighboring country, and accordingly resolve, 1, to set up ad hoc committee to investigate the causes and provide solutions to the problems of irregular migration across Sahara Mediterranean Sea to Europe, and 2, all the federal government to strengthen the National Agency for Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons, NAPIT, and the Nigerian Immigration Service to take effective measures toward preventing the trafficking in persons and irregular migration. Mr. President, I so move. Thank you.
Deputy Senate President.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I rise to second this very important motion. Mr. President, this motion actually speaks to the harsh economic conditions in Africa, not just Nigeria, because these migrants are not just Nigerians.
There are peoples spread all across Africa who are looking for greener pastures in Europe, Asia, and America. Unfortunately, there's no green pasture anywhere. But what's going to happen is that a bunch of cabals take advantage of these harsh economic conditions and promise El Dorado to the unsuspecting youths of this country and other countries of Africa. They take money from them and put them through the harsh journey across this desert, through the seas, and then some of them die in the process. And if you make it eventually to Europe, we discover there's no job anywhere, and coming back becomes very difficult. So we must use this platform to let our youths know that there's no job available in Europe for them, so that there's nothing to aspire to. We believe that their future lies in this continent. Their hope lies in this continent. But as leaders, we owe them the responsibility to provide for them, not only for today, but also for tomorrow. How do we do this? I believe that it's our responsibility to be creative enough to provide job opportunities for our people. We have to go into industrialization. Emphasis is being placed today on agriculture. Yes, agriculture is good. But commercial agriculture has made it possible for a few people to feed a nation. And so that cannot take care of all the youths that are unemployed. So I believe, like Asia, the hope lies in the industrialization. We must make conscious efforts, together with the private sector, to provide factories, industries all over Nigeria and the rest of Africa, so that this will help to create jobs. We also need to put emphasis on ICT. There are creativity in ICT that can take care of so many people. And if we do this, I'm sure that jobs will be created. So it is our responsibility to discourage our people from taking this risk of trying to migrate to Europe. I've said before that one of our greatest resources as a nation is our young people. And so we must do everything possible to keep them within so we can take advantage of their potentials. So I support this motion, and I believe that this is serious enough for us to do something to ensure that this trend is reversed. So I commend the movers of this motion, and I support it, and I urge the rest of our colleagues to support this motion.
Senator Shusani.
Mr. President, I stand as Comrade Senator Sheikh Husani to add my voice to this very important motion. Trans-Sahara Europe migration crisis is a reality that has affected nations in the West African sub-region and in the East African sub-region. Irregular migration is about human trafficking, it's about terrorism, it's also about drug trafficking. According to statistics from International Organization for Migration, over 4,500 Africans drowned in the sea, Mediterranean Sea, in their attempts to cross over to Europe. Now, this is alarming. It is a moral duty for us as a nation and also as a parliament to intervene, to see that our young ones don't stop crossing the Sahara to Libya, to Algeria, in an attempt to reach to Lampedusa in Italy. Mr. President, it is of note that just last week, about 40 West Africans, mainly from Ghana and Nigeria, perished along the Sahara. And we can't fold our arms to this. The solutions to problems like this has to do with institutional framework and multinational joint task forces. But I believe that a motion like this will bring to spotlight the plight of young people in search of greener pastures who will leave the shores of their country in an attempt to cross over to Europe. I so support this very motion, and I believe it should be a springboard to addressing this problem. Thank you.
Distinguished colleagues, we'll go straight to the prayer. Prayer 1, set up ad hoc committee to investigate the causes and preferred solution to the problems of irregular migration across the Sahara Mediterranean Sea to Europe and Senator James Manja, you're raising your hand.
I don't think it's necessary to set up any other committee. I think there's a committee of the Senate that's emphasizing this.
Second, yes, Senator Gabriel Gaya. So, prayer one will read up the Standing Committee on Foreign Affairs to investigate the causes and preferred solutions to the Joint Committee of Foreign Affairs and Diaspora to investigate the causes and preferred solutions to the problems of regular migration across Sahara, Mediterranean Sea to Europe. Those in favor of prayer one as amended say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Prayer two, urge the federal government to strengthen national agencies for the prohibition of trafficking in persons, NAPTIP, and the National Immigration Services to take effective measures towards preventing trafficking in persons and illegal migration. Those in favor of prayer two say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Let me thank the mover of this very, very important motion. It is timely. We have, as I said, we have a moral duty. We must intervene and find a solution to prevent and stop this practice. I hope the two committees will be able to come for a way forward that we can. I read just last week that we lost over 25,000, that's just Nigerians. And I believe that we must put an end to this. And every time you travel now to European countries and meet with the official, the governments, the major concern is this issue of migration. And I think that we should seize the opportunity to work on a multilateral, bilateral, to address solution to this. So I hope that the committee will be able to come up with something that we can implement. Thank you. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, very respected colleagues, the third order of the day is a motion standing in the name of Senator George Thompson Sekibo and two others on the urgent need for the completion of Bodo-Boni Road, linking the Nigeria liquefied natural gas complex. Mr. President, you may wish to invite Senator George Thompson Sekibo to move the motion.
Senator Johnson Sekibo.
Mr. Senior President, my distinguished colleagues, I am Senator George Thompson Sekibo. Mr. President, the motion on the urgent need for the completion of Bodo-Boni Road, linking the Nigerian liquefied natural gas complex to the mainland, is co-sponsored by my colleagues from Rivers State, Senator Sinakachuku Tango Idiozo, Senator Magnus Inge Abi. Mr. President, I move the motion. The Senate is aware that the 37-kilometer Bodo-Boni Road project in Rivers State, linking Bodo community in Gokana local government area to Grand Boni in Boni local government, that owns the Nigerian liquefied natural gas complex, was awarded in the year 2002 by the President Olusegun Obasanjo's administration at a contract value of 20 billion naira only. The Senate is aware also that President Obasanjo's administration did not do much on the project after mobilizing the contractor to site, as it was poorly funded and later became abandoned till 2014. It recalls that in 2014, with passionate effort from the people of Boni Kingdom and other prominent Rivers elders, the former President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan administration re-awarded the road project after revalidation at the contract value of 120 billion naira only for it only, and appropriated 20 billion naira for it in the 2015 budget to recommence its construction works. It regrets that the federal government did not spend any amount out of the appropriated amount in 2015, and the worst was that the project was not captured in 2016 budget, thus making obvious the lack of understanding of the importance of this road for national economic development.
The Senate is aware that in the 2017 budget, the federal government has proposed to spend a meager 9 billion naira only, which is not adequate to mobilize the contractors to site. Regrets that this is the same attitude of past administrations that eventually caused the abandonment of this project for this long. Acknowledge that in 2016, the governor of Rivers, the chief Barrister from Mr. Wanwike, approached the Nigerian Liquefied Natural Gas Management and appealed to the corporation to partner with the federal government to execute the project, as it would benefit both the federal government, the NNLG business empire, the people of Bonny, other communities along the road, and indeed the business community in the country. Because acknowledging the importance of the road and the urgent need for its completion, the Nigerian Liquefied Natural Gas Company management accepted to contribute a whopping sum of 50% of the contract value, which is equivalent to a contract value of 120 billion naira. That is, they are to make a contribution of 60 billion naira only. Regrets that the federal government, which has a major business concern worth over 13 billion US dollars at Bonny, and who will benefit more from the completion of the project, has not taken the needed steps to actualize the commencement of the project, when even over 50% of the cost will be defrayed through partnership with the management of the NNLG. Because that at the inception of the present administration, when funds were extremely scarce to kickstart the new administration, it was the dividend of over 11 billion USD from the LNG that enabled the federal government to commence the administration effectively. Also because that outside the dividend that accrued to the federal government at the appropriate times, the 3 tiers of government have been receiving between $500 and $1 billion from the LNG annually in form of taxes. Believes that the completion of the road project will enhance the status of the Nigerian Liquefied Natural Gas Corporation and attract more revenue to the government, improve the business environment, and assist in uplifting the standard of living for the indigenes who have accepted to peacefully host this gigantic liquefied natural gas processing facility. Regrets that the federal government, which makes over 1.5 billion USD annually from the LNG, from both taxes and dividends, could abandon such an important road, linking their investment side to other parts of the country. Mr. President, before I go to the prayer, I just want to make a 2-sentence synopsis. We are aware that there is 9 billion naira in the budget. This road has been abandoned for about 14 years. And we are aware that in other budgets, not in this Senate, not in this term, sometimes they do some pass-through sum of 5 billion or 7 billion, as the case may be, but they were not spent. And now we also have some money. But now we have an advantage. The advantage is that the LNG has accepted to put 50%, take care of 50% of the cost of the project. I think what we need actually now is a political will on the part of the federal government and part of the Ministry of Works to conclude such arrangement with the LNG, so that when they bring out whatever they have in their 9 billion, LNG will be bringing out also their fund. It will be a counterpart funding arrangement. We want, the prayer is that they should be able to take the appropriate steps and make sure that such MOUs and agreements are properly concluded before we go into even the serious rain season. So the Senate accordingly resolved to invite the Minister of Works to brief the Senate Committee on Works on all circumstances surrounding the federal government's inability to partner with the LNG management to complete the Bonny Road project or any other issue that has stood against the completion of the Bonny Road within 2 weeks. Direct the Committee on Works, on the Senate Committee on Works, to carry out an independent comprehensive evaluation of the Bonny Road project and brief the Senate within 4 weeks. Mr. President, I so move.
Senator James Manager.
Thank you, Mr. President. My highly respected colleagues, James Manager, CON Delta South. Mr. President, I rise to second this motion, very important motion, and to urge my colleagues to support it. Mr. President, this is not a controversial motion at all. And I'm happy to note that the Rivers Caucus here in the Senate, united through Senator Sekebo, as reflected in the order in the motion, across party lines. I am happy. I only hope and pray that this could be replicated right inside Rivers State, so that we will have peace in Rivers, political peace in Rivers.
Lovely.
It's lovely, Mr. President.
Very good.
Mr. President, I think as explained by Senator Sekebo on the body of the motion, what is important is for a political will, somebody, an organ to coordinate this very important road project, particularly when the LNG has also pledged to pay 50% of the cost. That is a very welcome development. And the other side, I think there is 9 billion naira already in the budget for 2017. And so what is important is for the Committee of Works to do the necessary coordination under Gaia. I'm sure it's a very competent personality for this very important commercial road to come to fruition. Because the amount that is there, what we stand to benefit as a nation from the construction of that road, I think if there's any road that must be constructed at all, that road must be number one, in my own view. And therefore, Mr. President, I support this motion and I second it accordingly.
Distinguished colleagues, I think before I just take contribution, let me, as a point of information, also add my voice that I can't confirm that I remember when the LNG paid me a courtesy call, they did emphasize this point that they're ready to finance 50% of this. So I think it would be useful for us to hear from Senator Kabiru Gaya, because I think, as you rightly said, the political will of doing it is really what we need now. Senator Kabiru Gaya.
Thank you, Your Excellency, the President of the Senate, my distinguished colleagues. I commend Senator Skivo and 2 other senators showing the Rivers State united on this motion. Let me clearly say that, Mr. President, this government of President Muhammadu Buhari is totally committed to this project. For the government to put 9 billion on a 35-kilometer road, it shows there is commitment by that government. And it's very important to have this road because of the access between the liquefied gas station and the neighboring environment. So therefore, this money, we have put 9 billion naira in the budget for this project, and it's enough to take off the project. And while the gas company have agreed to put the amount to pay. So therefore, the project will take off, and they're preparing to get for the proper necessary things on the project. So definitely, this was taken off. Let me assure the Rivers State all the bottlenecks have virtually been removed, and the project will start very soon, sir. Thank you, sir.
Senator Magnus Abi.
Thank you, Mr. President. And let me also thank the chairman of the Senate Committee on Works for his explanations. Mr. President, this particular project is not a project for River State, neither is it a project for the South-South. It is a project for all Nigerians, because every Nigerian stands to benefit from this project. Mr. President, you will recall that dividends from Bonny LNG paid to the federal government over the years have been in the billions. It has been very difficult for Bonny LNG to operate at maximum capacity and maximum profit because of the cost of transporting every single item by sea and by air. Because of the insecurity in the area, most of the staff have to be airlifted at every point, every day. And all that has created great costs, inconvenience, and challenges for the successful operation of the company. Mr. President, as we speak, they are about to start another train of the Bonny LNG. And the absence of this road will only escalate that cost, which will in turn reduce the amount of dividends that will be payable to the Nigerian government
and the amount of money that will be shared to all the states and local governments of Nigeria. Therefore, investing in this project is a top priority for the entire economy of this country. Let me also add, Mr. President, that I am aware that the Federal Minister for Works has been to the site of this project more than twice to show the level of commitment that the federal government has to this project, and the President himself had directed that work on the project must start this year. It is, however, important that the Senate Committee on Works should join us to monitor what is going on there so that the entire effort that has been made to see that this project takes off is not wasted. I want to commend my brothers who have come together to show that this project cuts across party lines and heals every divide that is necessary to make Nigeria to move forward. I believe, sir, that if we can also do that in the area of the insecurity that is presently plaguing our state, where people are being beheaded left and right, we will be able to make substantial progress as far as Rivers State is concerned. I want to once again thank my brothers and thank the entire Senate for the support that is being given to this motion so that Nigeria can benefit from this project. Thank you very much.
No, before prayers, Senator Chukwudezu, no, what do you pray?
Thank you, Mr. Senate President and my fellow colleagues. Let me start by thanking the mover of this motion for thinking it necessary to bring this to the national front line. I want to commend President Olusegun Obasanjo for initiating this project at all. Because without that process, we won't be talking of this motion today. Subsequently, our brother, President Goodluck Jonathan, based on the demands and the pressures of our people, was able to review it to make it more pragmatic. And today, we are talking of Mr. Project, who is our governor, who had gone ahead to discuss with LLNG to get that understanding of a 50% sponsorship by LNG. All these people have played their role. It is now left for us, and thank God you have also asked the Chairman Works of this Senate to speak on this matter. What it shows is that this project is very important to Nigeria and to this Senate. We are not going to do any harm to the Nigerian state if this project is undertaken. I know it would enhance the relationship between the host community and LNG, which is what we want. We have been thinking about militancy and all that in Niger Delta, but Bonny as a community had hosted LNG since the 1990s and had had no crisis with them. The only thing we can do is to help these people overcome their obstacles, which is transportation. Right now, the only way you can get to Bonny is by boat. If they can feel the presence of LNG by having a road, which LNG is also putting its name to it by paying 50% of the cost, then I think everybody will be better off for it. I commend the Senate for taking this motion as its motion, as it is. Because as the chairman hasn't spoken, it shows that the Senate is already doing something about it. And I pray that the members, when the questions are put, look at it in positive light. Thank you, Mr. President.
Distinguished colleagues, the prayers are straight. Let's go straight to prayers. One, invite the Minister of Power, Works and Housing to brief the Senate Committee on Works on the circumstances surrounding the federal government's inability to partner with LNG management to complete the Bodo-Bonny Road project or any other issue that has stood against the completion of the Bodo-Bonny Road within 2 weeks. Those in favor of prayer 1 say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Prayer 2, direct the Committee on Works to carry out an independent comprehensive evaluation of the Bodo-Bonny Road project and brief Senate within 4 weeks. Those in favor of prayer 2 say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Senator Sekibu and the other two senators who have co-sponsored this motion. It's a very, very important motion, and we must see through it and see to its completion and see for the project to take off. This is a project, as you rightly say, will improve host community relationship. It's another example of public sector, private sector partnership, and it just needs the political will to do it. And I think that we're best positioned to make this happen. So, Chairman Works, please take this as a priority. I believe that we should make sure that this road does take off, and for the good of not only people of Bonny, Rivers State, Nigeria at all. Thank you. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, very distinguished colleagues, the fourth order of the day is a motion standing in the name of Senator Tijani Kaura on the urgent need for the Senate to look into the recurring shortfall in allocation for personnel costs in tertiary institutions in Nigeria. Mr. President, you may wish to invite Senator Tijani Kaura to move the motion.
Senator Tijani Kaura.
Thank you, Mr. President. Distinguished colleagues, my name is Senator Tijani Kaura, Zamfara North. Mr. President, I rise to move this motion, an urgent need for the Senate to look into the recurring shortfall in allocation of personnel costs in tertiary institutions in Nigeria. Mr. President, before I move my motion, I want to make some clarifications. This motion would have come earlier than now at the process of budget making some few weeks ago. But for reasons of queue and exigencies of a number of bills and motions in the hallowed chamber, it could not be heard at that time until today. I must, however, thank the Chairman of Rules and Business for finally putting my motion today. Mr. President, the Senate aware that the provision for personnel costs for the federal government-owned tertiary institutions in 2017 appropriation bill is the same with the 2016 budgetary allocation in terms of shortfall. Disturbed about the deliberate reduction of budgetary allocation for personnel in all federal tertiary institutions in Nigeria, thereby dampening the morale of administrators, academic and non-academic staff nationwide, and threatening the fragile industrial peace in our tertiary institution campuses. Worry that this unhealthy practice has continued to force administrators in tertiary institutions in Nigeria to pay salaries, in some cases half salaries, largely with internally generated revenue, which often is not enough. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, further worry that the reduction in the allocation for personnel costs has led to a situation where staff union deductions, payee deductions, and the National Housing Fund deductions are usually paid in arrears. The situation affects the ability of tertiary institutions to implement promotions which are in very many cases long overdue. Also informed that the presidential initiative on continuous audit have visited most of the federal-owned institutions and verified their nominal roles without corresponding action. Further informed that consequent upon these developments, industrial action now looms across tertiary.
Point of order, Senator Gbenga Ashafa.
Mr. President, Senator Gbenga Ashafa, representing Lagos Senatorial District, I stand on order 56, 5, and 9. May I read, sir?
Go ahead and read.
Order 56, 5 says, senators shall not cross the floor of the Senate unnecessarily, nor sit in a place allotted to any other senator. I can see so many of my colleagues seated in different seats, particularly on the other side. And 9, when... Thank you, sir. And 9, when a senator is speaking, no senator may converse aloud or make any noise or disturbance to interrupt him. There are so many pockets of discussions all around.
When the order is sustained, distinguished colleagues, can you please let us comply with these rule books that we all abide and swear by to go with? Please let us keep the noise down and respect for our colleagues as they contribute. Senator Tijani Kara, continue.
Thank you, Mr. President. Further informed that consequent upon these developments, industrial action now looms across our tertiary institutions. Convinced that necessary measures must be taken to address the issues so as to provide more conducive atmosphere for teaching and learning in our tertiary institutions, thereby boosting the quality of our educational system. Mr. President, I am aware today in my state there is a Federal College of Education, Gusau Technical. For the last 5 months, only half salary is being paid to both academic and non-academic staff. And I'm sure similar situations obtain in several tertiary institutions. And I think it is now time for this Senate chamber to take decision to bring this to a total stop. Accordingly, Mr. President, the Senate resolves urge the federal government to, as a matter of urgency, propose a supplementary budget to bridge the gap in the personal allocation of federal government-owned tertiary institutions since the 2017 budget is almost concluded. That is why I explained that this motion would have come earlier than now. Secondly, I urge the Ministries of Budget, Finance and Education to take steps to correct the anomalies in the subsequent appropriation bills. I so move, Mr. President. Thank you.
Yes, and to Jibril Barrow.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am Barrow Jibril. I represent Kano North. Mr. President, one of the essentials for having a good society, a sound country, is having an educated populace. And Mr. President, in order to have that, we need, and it's really necessary and a must, to make sure that those who are to provide that needed education to the populace are well catered for. That is, our teachers, particularly in tertiary institutions and other institutions of learning in the country, must, as a matter of importance, be taken care of by way of paying their salary allowances as at when due. But, Mr. President, what we are seeing in this country is a trend, a worrisome trend, where these teachers, these lecturers, and other workers in our tertiary institutions are not paid their salary allowances promptly. And obviously, this is capable of impacting on their performances by way of not really doing or performing their job in the manner that is desired of them. And this trend must stop. A situation where inadequate provisions are made for the payment of salary allowances of teachers and institutions is really worrisome. It is known to the appropriate authorities. They all know what these institutions need to pay their allowances and salary allowances of their teachers, of the other lecturers and workers. but still, the amounts being provided are quite inadequate. We need to do something, and we need to call the attention of Minister of Finance and Budget Office to stop this ugly trend. Having said so, Mr. President, I know all over the world, there is no institution that government can fully take care of its needs. We have been telling these universities that they need to look inwards to find ways of generating funds themselves. We know that there are means of generating funds, money, revenue by these institutions through means like endowment funds, setting endowment funds to be able to make money outside what is given to them by government. They can also sell their patents from, their research, their research findings, and also commercializing their research findings in order to make money. This is the trend all over the world. That's why you have institutions like Yale University, Oxford University, even in Africa here, you have universities in South Africa that have fat balance sheets through monies they make through their through ventures set up by them to really complement what government is given to them. So for this reason, it's important that we draw the attention of our institutions to really look inwards in making sure that they make money themselves rather than completely relying on government. Well, we know the government has to do its own bits. It has to do what it needs to do. But still, they need to find ways to complement what government is doing. I so submit, Mr. President. Thank you.
Senator John Eno.
Mr. President, my name is John Owen, Eno Cross River Central. Mr. President, I speak in support of this motion. Unarguably, I think there is a lot wrong. There's a lot to affect motivation of staff who are not being able to pay salaries because of a certain salary shortfall. And I think, just like the mover had indicated, this motion would have been more useful if it had come up for debate before the 2017 budget was passed. But having said so, I think that it's also still important that our attention is called to this subject matter. My only concern, really, with this motion is that if you look at the personnel cost of our national budget, it's getting to about 2.5 trillion in personnel alone. I mean, if we have any challenge with our budgeting in terms of trying to bridge the gap between the recurrent budget and the capital budget, the personnel component is what has remained the challenge. And I think it just continues to rise and rise. Some years back, overhead budget was also a challenge, but I think that we've been able to put that under control. Now, we also need to be able to reconcile. Almost every year, we get figures of how much government is saving as a result of the application of the IPs, system in various MDAs of government. We also need to be able to know whether, in addition to what is being told us, whether IPs has been extended to our tertiary institutions. And if it has, why does this remain a problem? There is also a fact that agencies of government even get into lobbying the Office of the Accountant General of the Federation for them not to be brought into IPs yet. What it means, therefore, is that there is something to be gained. There's something to be benefited by these agencies when they're not in order to come under the IPs platform. And I think that this is the only way that we can actually bring this under control and under proper monitoring. I think that, having said so, there's also something basically wrong with having a certain personnel figure for 2016, which was appreciated to be a shortfall, and having that same figure restated in 2017. I think there is a lot therefore wrong with the kind of budgeting that we have. And I think that going thus far, it's important that ahead of the 2018 budget, that the Office of the Accountant General properly presents a status report of all the agencies that have become IPs compliant. Because year in, year out, there is budgetary allocation that is given to that office for the continuous implementation of IPs. Because very early, IPs was appreciated to be the only system that can get us to achieve this. Because a lot of agencies of government, not just the university system, they keep increasing their overheads and their personnel. They keep recruiting
even when they're not supposed to recruit. So you can't keep having this uncontrollably without having an implication in terms of the adequacy of funds for personnel, when government has to balance out between what it can actually do in terms of development and infrastructure and in terms of payment of salaries. Because government cannot devote all its monies to the payment of salaries. So we need to be able to achieve this. When a certain figure is realized and is accepted, there is no how, it's irresponsible on the part of government to do budgeting and deliberately under budget for personnel. But I think that everybody needs to come clean on this. And it's only to that extent that we can continue to avoid these kinds of problems. Thank you.
Senator Rozoko.
Thank you, Mr. President, for giving me the floor. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, my name is Rose Oko. I represent I represent Cross River North in Cross River State. Mr. President, I totally support this motion, and I commend the mover of the motion for bringing this matter to the fore. Mr. President, the issue of shortfall in provisions for personnel costs in educational institutions across the country has been recurring for some years now. Mr. President, we are all aware that the education sector is beset with many problems, ranging from lack of infrastructure to poor infrastructure, decaying infrastructure, and teaching and teacher quality in our institutions. To add to it the issue of epileptic payment of personnel, Mr. President, worsens the situation. Mr. President, this matter is not restricted only to tertiary institutions. It's also down to federal government-owned colleges. Indeed, a good case in point is that of King's College, when last year, out of a budget of $337 million, only $37 million was provided in the budget. And again this year, of a budget of $340 million, only $160 million was provided. We are bringing that up in the supplementary appropriation. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, we will urge the office, the budget office, to please not to oversight in personnel costs in an area that reacts violently and is violent in its reaction to issues that concern them, like the universities. Mr. President, while universities even have some level of IGR, secondary schools do not have any IGR to talk of. And so for a school like King's College or any other federal government college for that matter to have a shortfall in its personnel costs is indeed very grave and grievous. Mr. President, to that extent, I would like to suggest that when these budgets come up to us in the National Assembly, if there is sufficient cost to show that indeed these monies are needed, when we notice these shortfalls, we should take steps to correct them before the budgets are finally signed into law. And I will also subscribe to the comments made by Senator John in terms of ensuring that all of them are brought into IPs. Thank you very much.
Last contributor first, Ogala.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. I'm First Ogola. I represent Bayelsa West. The issue of shortfall in personnel costs is an embarrassment to Nigeria and Nigerians. When the Federal University of Turkey were complaining of shortfall in salary remittances to them, and the Federal University of Petroleum Efun were also complaining of this shortfall, it was like an isolated case. You need personnel costs, you need overhead charges, you need capital costs to run universities. If the federal government is unable to fund personnel, which is the basic and minimal cost, even if development-wise the universities are stagnating, then it calls to question our ability to carry on with the federal university system. And when the government is unable to do that, then it calls for privatization of these universities. Let people who have the money fund these universities. But I pray my distinguished colleagues and the President of the Senate that we need to conduct clear personnel audits. And I'm happy there is a tertiary education committee of the Senate who can conduct that personnel audit. And so they can. And that if they are mandated, they can do that. So I'll come to the prayers for additional prayer for the Tertiary Education Committee of the Senate to be directed to ensure that we can solve this problem once and for all. Because the issue of they are ascertaining the shortfall, we have just prepared budget, and if there is a shortfall.
Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Prayer 2, urge the ministries of Budget, Finance, and Education to take steps to correct these anomalies in subsequent appropriation bills. Those in favor of prayer 2 say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Additional prayer. Yes, Senator Foster Ogala.
Conduct a profile of the personnel. The fourth part of the appropriate because
Can you repeat the prayer?
Direct the Tertiary Education Committee of the Senate to conduct a personnel and emolument audit to ensure that they verify the correct shortfall and report back to the Senate for appropriate resolution.
Any seconder. Any other prayer? Sir John Eno.
Mr. President, John Owaneno, Cross River Central. My additional prayer is call on the office of the Accountant General of the Federation to provide a status report of all IP's compliant MDAs to the National Assembly ahead of the 2018 budget. Yes.
Call on the office of the Accountant General to provide the IP status of what?
Yes.
Of all agencies, all MDAs.
Ahead of the 2018 budget.
Any seconder? Senator Dino Milai.
Mr. President, my dear colleagues, Dino Milai, I rise to second this very important prayer as moved by Senator John Owaneno. I so second.
I put prayer, additional prayer. Yes, Senator Tijani Kara.
Mr. President, this prayer does not in any way involve tertiary institutions. That is the main issue we are discussing today. And I think there is need for it to repress so that it will involve this institution.
Distinguished colleagues, there's an additional prayer which reads, call on the office of the Accountant General to provide the IP status of all MDAs and before the 2018 budget. Those in favor of this additional prayer say aye. Those against say nay. Nays have it. Any other additional prayer? Senator Magnus Abe.
Mr. President, my distinguished and eminent colleagues, I believe that having viewed this matter, we should take action on the matter, and we should direct our committee on tertiary education and TED fund to investigate the circumstances regarding this issue and report back to the Senate within 6 weeks.
Observation, sir.
So is anybody seconding this, Senator Tinubu?
Mr. President, I second the prayer ably moved by my distinguished colleague.
What is the prayer?
To mandate the Committee of Tertiary and Theft Fund to look into the matter, wholesome, investigation, and report back to the Senate in 6 weeks.
You pass. You have passed. Those in favor of the additional prayer to call on the Tertiary Education Committee to investigate the circumstances surrounding the issue and report back in 6 weeks. Those in favor of this additional prayer say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Senator Foster Ogala, you've been observing. Okay, what are you observing?
This last motion, it has been overtaken by them because my motion was not allowed to be seconded, and it escaped the observation of the President of the Senate to allow the seconder. But now that the President one has been seconded, I step down my case.
Thank you very much. I thank you. Leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, very distinguished colleagues, relying on our standing order 1B, I want to move that we arrange the order in which the reports have been reported here in the order paper. And I would suggest that we start with the report of the Committee on Foreign Affairs and subsequently report on Committee on Trade and Investment, and then Judiciary, Human Rights and Legal Matters. I will therefore move Mr. President, very distinguished colleagues, the 7th order of the day is now the 5th order of the day and is the presentation and consideration of the report of the Committee on Foreign Affairs on the screening of the following persons as non-career ambassadors of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. The names are: number 1, Justice Silvanus Adewere Nsofo Imo, resubmission. Number 2, Joseph Olushola E.G. Ondo, replacement. Number 3, Commodore Yusuf John Gahina, retired, Gombe, replacement. The single senators will report that the report of the committee was laid yesterday, Tuesday, 5th June 2017. Mr. President, you may wish to invite very distinguished Senator Mansurat Sumonu, chairman of the committee, to move the motion for the presentation and consideration of the report.
Yes, we are here to say our final goodbyes, but just before then, a point of order has been raised by Senator Ibrahim Abdullahi Damba about Kaduna South on what he described as extortion of pilgrims by the National Hajj Commission of Nigeria. He is here with us to explain. You said the charges given for this year's Hajj are bloated and unnecessary and unfair. What does that mean?
Thank you, Waziri Zayanu. The motion that I brought on the floor of the Senate is timely in view of the fact that Nigerians expressed their outcry over the increase, astronomical increase of the Hajj fares. The Hajj fare now stands on average at 1,550,000. Now, if you look at the components that make up the Hajj package, we have the tent cost, we have the ticket, we have the accommodation, and we have the feeding. In the first place, no pilgrim demanded that should be paid in Saudi Arabia, Mecca or Medina. Pilgrims, the National Hajj Commission enforced the feeding regime on the pilgrims. So what we are saying, it is inappropriate. We must have some degree of transparency in view of the policy of this administration, and that is what we have been preaching all along, that there should be transparency in whatever we do. And therefore, if pilgrims are insisting that they do not want the regime, this feeding regime, it should be done with. So we are calling for the reversal of the system that brings about the feeding system for the pilgrims, because it is not wanted by the pilgrims. It does not take the peculiarities of the nature of pilgrims. Individuals, they have different elements, and the way the feeding system, they are serviced, is even inconsistent with the way they worship. Okay. Because sometimes most of the food is serviced while they are at mosque. Yes.
Okay, so what is the stand of the Senate now on the motion?
The position of the Senate is very simple. I submitted 2 prayers. One, to now demand that the federal government should direct the National Hajj Commission so that they can bring down the Hajj fare package to an affordable limit. Because I brought in comparison of even some of the private tour operators that are also going to participate in this same year Hajj. Okay. For instance, I gave an example of Hajj Travels. The Hajj Travels, they are charging less than $1,000 for the air ticket by Ethiopian Airlines. And the Hajj Commission is charging $1,650 by Max Air. You see, it's highly exorbitant. Okay. So this thing should be well negotiated. Okay. And I think the issue of BPP should also come into play. Right. I am not sure whether this thing has gone through the due process of procurement. Okay. Yes.
All right. Thank you very much indeed, sir.
Okay,
thank you very much indeed.
Okay.
Thank you. Now, this is how far we can go on this edition of from the National Assembly Senate. We'll see you next week, God willing. On behalf of the entire production crew, this is Wazir Zayanu saying have a very pleasant day ahead and bye-bye.